The event I chose to do for my presentation is the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. They guarantee individuals certain freedoms protected from federal and state governments. The first book I chose to review is The Bill of Rights, The Fight to Secure America's Liberties, written by Carol Birkin. She's a history professor from Barch and the City University of New York. The second book is The Bill of Rights, Creation and Reconstruction, written by Akil Reed Amar, a law professor from Yale. Both books were similar in some of the subject matter they covered. Both explained the tense political environment the Bill of Rights was written in between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. The Federalists believed in a strong central government versus the Anti-Federalists believed most of this governmental power, should be held in the states. This was the climate that actually brought about the Bill of Rights, as the Federalists, specifically James Madison, wrote the Bill of Rights to basically appease the Anti-Federalists. Some of the differences in the books, the difference of the Bill of Rights, Creation and Reconstruction, Akil Amar's book, it had a very legal approach. He used very legal wording, as well as he focused mainly on the interpretation of the amendments, who it applied to, and what it means in a court of law scenario. He also spent the last half of his book talking about how the interpretation of the amendments has changed and how it could have basically overridden states' rights with the bringing about of the 14th Amendment, which abolished slavery. This is very different from Carol Birkin's book, The Fight to Secure America's Liberties, in the sense that she took a very objective approach where she just followed the story of how it was written, and it was a very personal approach, as well as she followed James Madison as he wrote the Bill of Rights, as well as some of the other stories and of the representatives, and specifically how they felt and why they voted the way they did or made the changes they did. In conclusion, I think the biggest reason for these differences, the first being the time. If you look at Pew Research, one of their political surveys showed that in the year 2016, when Carol Birkin wrote her book, trust in the United States government was at an all-time low. So this would be a political environment where people are losing their trust in the federal system, and that could bring about her inspiration to reaffirm American citizens' rights, their individual rights, as well as the opposite of that. Akil Amar wrote his book in 2000, when, if you look at that same survey, shows that confidence in the American government was high. That isn't a very good climate to push your individual rights, but it's also almost a neutral climate where he could just write about what he felt the legal interpretation was. I think the biggest difference between the writers was actually their specific careers. Carol Birkins is a history professor, which makes sense why in her book she quoted more personal journal entries and a lot of letters. She used a lot of letters as sources, and took a very personal approach in following James Madison's writing of the Bill of Rights, as well as the other representatives and their feelings and their beliefs and very much current events of that day. Versus Akil Amar is a law professor, so he spent most of his book talking about the legal interpretation. What exactly does this mean? And using previous cases to back that up, which is exactly how the legal system works. As well as the entire last half of his book was about how it can get reinterpreted with the addition of another amendment. I really enjoyed this project. I learned a lot about the Bill of Rights and why it was written, as well as what the founding fathers really were trying to mean by this. And I got that from reading both perspectives, and a lot of them had a lot to say of the same things to say. Both authors had the same things to say about what exactly this amendment means. But there was a lot of differences. Mainly the differences I saw, though, were in the style and how they displayed that information, how they tried to teach us. And that is my presentation. Thank you.